Now let's head over to the management console and we're going to start building out some stacks on AWS CloudFormation. In the management console, we're going to go to Services, Management and Governance, and CloudFormation. And what I'm going to do for this exercise is I'm just going to change to US East North Virginia. So again, this is a regional service, so you do need to choose the region that you're going to operate from. And the reason being is I have a template file and it's actually hard-coded the region in it. I could easily change it, but I just want to make it easier for you guys so that you can do the same thing. So I suggest you change to North Virginia as well. So in CloudFormation, we create something called a stack. And in here, we can choose to upload a template file, provide an S3 URL, or there are a few options which are samples from AWS. They're not really that great, so I prefer to actually use one of my own templates. Now, I have this template available for you. We've got a few for this course in your code and files directory, CloudFormation. And the first one we're going to use is called ec2instance.yaml. So in this case, what we're doing is a really simple file, and it just essentially declares some resources to be created. And the first one is called my instance. It's an AWS EC2 instance, so it's an Amazon EC2 instance. And it's going to be in an availability zone in US East 1A. And we've also specified the AMI ID, and that has to be correct for that region. And then the instance type. So just a few simple parameters. So back in CloudFormation, we need to find our template. So I'm going to choose ec2instance.yml. That's going to be uploaded to CloudFormation. And you see it's actually uploaded it to S3. And if we want to, we can then go and view in Designer. And it's not going to show us too much because this is a very simple configuration. But you can then see in here, we're going to create an EC2 instance. And you can see it's added a bit of information to the file and what's going to be actually configured. We can then go here and click on Create Stack. And this will take us back to the wizard. So let's click on Next. I'm just going to call this my EC2 instance. Click on Next. We can scroll down, we don't need to change anything else. Scroll to the bottom and click on Create Stack. And it's as simple as that. And now we can actually watch what's happening in here. So we can see that we have a create in progress. So we're looking at our my EC2 instance, which is a stack in CloudFormation, and our resources are going to be created here. So if you click refresh, you'll be able to see what's happening, and that should complete quite quickly. Over in the EC2 management console, I can see that I now have an instance launching. So that has been launched from the stack that I created. And if I click refresh, we can see it's complete. So the EC2 instance has been launched and it's in the current state of booting up and configuring itself. So that was a very simple example. I have another template here that I want to show you. And this is where we're using something called mappings. So what a mapping does is we're basically still building out the same kind of resource, an AWS EC2 instance. But what we want to do is, depending on what region we actually deploy it into, it's going to select a different AMI ID. So if I'm in US East 1 and I'm deploying a dev instance, it's going to use the T2 micro instance type and this AMI ID. And that's defined down here. So I can actually define these parameters as part of the launch of the stack and say, well, I'm going to launch it into US East 1 and this is going to be a dev instance. And then this will automatically make sure that it configures the correct one. And it does that by using this find in map. It's going to look for the AMI and it's going to look for the region, and then it's going to look for whether it's a dev or a prod. Another example here is the EC2 instance parameter file. And in this case, we're actually providing some allowed values. So we're saying that the instance type can be a T2 micro, an M1 small, or an M1 large. So in this case, it's not going to allow us to deploy a different instance type. So these are just to show you a couple of examples of the type of information that you can include in a template. And there's a lot more. So I suggest if you want to learn how to use CloudFormation templates, you have a look on the AWS website, because there's some great documentation for teaching you this. It goes beyond the scope of this course to go into too much detail, but I just wanted to give you a taster. Let's also look at another service. So we will launch this one. So in this case, we have this s3 bucket.yml file. And what I want to do is create a bucket. And so I've got the resource type as AWS S3 bucket. The access control is public read. And I'm creating an index.html and an error.html, or I'm defining them. And what this means is we're actually going to create a static website on Amazon S3. So let's go back to CloudFormation and we're going to build this stack. So let's go back up to stacks, create stack with new resources, upload the template file, and we're going to choose s3bucket.yml. I'm going to click on next, call this S3 static website, click on next, and click on next and create stack. And so that's going to create that stack for us. And that was super fast. That literally took a few seconds because all it had to do was create an S3 bucket with a simple configuration. So over on the S3 management console, we can see it's created this bucket, and Digital Cloud is included in the name, but then it uses some other, random characters here to make it unique. And you can see it's configured it as public. So let's go into this bucket. And we can see here we've got something called static website hosting, and it's actually enabled. And it's defined the index.html and error.html documents. So that's great. We've got those defined, but they don't actually exist at the moment, so we need to upload them. Under permissions, we can see that block all public access is off, and we've set the access control list to public. And what that means is here under public access, list objects is set to yes, which means people in the public can list objects in the bucket. So that's defined at the bucket level. Now you'll note that there's no policy. We used a policy before to make our objects public, but there isn't one here. So let's go back. I'm going to upload a couple of objects. And in our CloudFormation directory, we've got the error.html and the index.html. So I'm going to upload those two objects, and that's finished. Now, what I want to do is show you the permissions on these. So if I check the box there, click on permissions, and what we can see here is we've got the access for the object owner, which is full permissions, access for other AWS accounts, so you can provide other accounts with access, and then we've got public access, and there is no access at this stage. So that's because even though we defined the ability to enable public access in our bucket, we need to define it on the object level as well. So if we come back up, we can select two of these, click on make public. And now if we go into the permissions on one of these, we'll see that public access has read object set to yes. So let's go back up to the bucket level, go to static website hosting, and we have this URL here. So this is the static website for the URL. So I'm going to click to open that, and we get this page. So this is our index.html that we uploaded saying, congratulations, you've launched a static website on S3. So those were both successful. What I'm going to do now is delete my stacks. Now what happens when you delete a stack is it's actually going to roll back the configuration. So if we go to my EC2 instance here, click on delete stack. Because it was able to build the stack, it also knows how to remove it. So it's able to terminate and delete all the resources associated with your stack. These are very simple stacks, so there's not a lot to happen, but in much more complex stacks, there's quite a lot going on, and it's able to actually reverse that configuration. But you do have to check. Sometimes if you've modified something, it might not work. So let's do the same for our static website. And straight away, I get a delete failed. And the reason is the bucket's not empty. So because we modified the resource and we added some items to it, we're not able to delete the bucket. So back in S3, what I'm going to do is go into this bucket, just delete these two objects. So I'll do that manually. Now they're gone. And let's go back and try and delete the stack again. And it's asking if we want to retain these resources. We don't need to do that. We've deleted them. Let's click on delete stack. And this time we have a delete complete. So that looks successful. Let's check this one here. That looks good as well. So again, this is another area where when you delete your stack and it reverses the configuration, make sure you go and check that things are deleted, because sometimes something will fail and then you might have a resource that's costing you money that's still running on AWS. So that's it for this lesson. In the next lesson, we're going to build a more complex stack.